Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 4 of our series, Shelf Space with Kino Lorber, where we talk about all things film, filmmaking, and physical media with Kino Lorber's head of acquisitions, Frank Tarzi. This month, I have Frank all to myself, so we can hopefully get to know him a little better, and we'll focus most of the show on your audience questions. This time around, we did something a little different. We sent out a request for questions ahead of time to our email list, yet another reason to subscribe to our newsletter. And we received a ton of questions. So we'll do our best to get through as many as we can. But if you do have a question that you want to ask in real time, please submit in the YouTube chat as always. We just ask that you please stick with the topics of film and physical media. But if you do have a customer service question, please submit them at the link in the video description below. Hello, Frank. How are you? It's just you and me today.
I'm good.
How's your summer been? Have you seen any good movies or rediscovered any old ones? I think you mentioned in the past that summer is your favorite movie or your favorite season for watching movies.
Yeah, well, being a fan of genre and it was always the summer season was what we looked forward to as kids. And, you had around May, late May, you would have some of the big films coming out. And as the years went by, they starting the summer season earlier and earlier, even starting films started coming out in April that would have, in the past, would have been considered summer movies. I don't go to too many movies that much anymore, to the actual theaters. So I wait for them to either come on streaming or whatever. I know the two that I was really looking forward to seeing, one was Mad Max, because I loved Fury Road, so I wanted to see that. I still haven't seen it, and
It's pretty good. I don't think it's as good as Mad Max
yeah, that's
either,
that's
but
what everybody told me it
decent.
wasn't as good. So I'm all right. I'll
But
just
it's
wait.
important, I think, in the saga to watch it.
Yeah, and I think there was a few other ones I wanted to see. I know I wanted to see the Deadpool movie because those were always kind of fun.
Yeah.
Uh, but I haven't seen too much this year. I just, but I remember the summer season being like that was like when I went to go to see movies. I would go to we're out from school, so we would go to all the great Times Square Manhattan theaters, and watching a movie with a New York audience, a Manhattan audience was something else. It's like being in like going to like an amusement park. Like I remember watching Die Hard 2, because I loved the original Die Hard, just blew me away. It was incredible, everything. But I remember watching Die Hard 2 with an audience on a opening night, and the crowd was so into it that they were cheering at the right spots and laughing at the right spots, and you know by the time I walked out of there, I was like, I'm almost floated out of that place. Like that's how incredible of an experience it was. And I remember walking out saying, "Wow, this was better than the original." But of course, later on when I watched it again, I'm like, "No, it's not." It was just watching it with that audience and that enthusiasm was just overwhelming. Um, I remember the crowd will go nuts over a trailer sometimes. Like I remember going to the theaters and seeing something. I forgot what the movie was, but I remember we saw the poster for the Deadpool, Clint Eastwood's final Dirty Harry movie, and we're like, "Oh, I hope they show a trailer." And the trailer opens up with some Chinese restaurant being robbed, and from behind the camera you hear, "You forgot your fortune cookie," the Clint Eastwood line,
One
and
liner.
the whole theater like cheered, like that was like they all knew what it was, so they heard his voice, and it was like I miss those days because those theaters were like special. They were like the New York theater. You would go see a movie like Aliens or you see a movie like Die Hard and with that crowd, and then go watch it again in Toronto or another city, and they'd be quiet the whole time. And it was just like,
Not the
wow,
same.
that's not the same. No, yeah. So yeah,
I
that was
love
that was the reason I love summer movies so much. It's the whole summer season. So
I was gonna say I love hearing about your, movie going experience as a New Yorker growing up in New York. Can you tell us a little bit more about that, what it was like growing up and how it's changed?
yeah, well, I grew up in Queens. In Flushing, we used to have the RKO Keith, the RKO Prospect, and the UA Quartet. And these theaters all had opened in 1920s, 1923, 1926, and 26, I think. So they are major, major theaters. At one point, they all were over 2,000 seats. They all screened only one movie. Now, at that point when I was going, the balcony, which was over 1,000 seats, was the big house. The bottom of the theater, they had split into two houses. So it was three movies. When I was a kid, Saturdays, I would go in and buy a ticket for one film, sneak into the theaters and see all three movies and come out. So I would walk in around noon and come out around 8 p.m. or whatever. That was my childhood. But when I started going to the city, I discovered the Grand House theaters and also the really beautiful theaters like the Ziegfeld and the RKO Warner and the Lowe's Astor Plaza. These theaters, the Lowe's State, these were like huge 1,500, 1,200 seat theaters that just showed one movie. And it was always sad to go there when there was a movie that opened very poorly. Like I remember when I went to the Ziegfeld, which is one of the most beautiful theaters in New York, and Burt Reynolds' Heat was playing there. And I'm walking towards the theater from far away. I'm like, what's playing at the Ziegfeld? I don't see no marquee. And I just saw four letters. It was like HEAT in red. And I was like, wow, I got to go see it in the Ziegfeld. So I went to see it. And it was me and another person in this 1,300 seat theater.
Wow.
So yeah, so that was the opposite of the experience I had with films like Terminator 2 and Batman. And I remember when I saw the Tim Burton's Batman, I got interviewed by, I think it was Channel 5 or something like that, news, because I was wearing a Batman t-shirt. And so at that point, it was kind of funny because that was another experience. Like we used to go to these Thursday night midnight screenings and see all these movies for the first time, and it was always sold out ahead of time. So it was great. Then I think I said it last time where in a 10-block radius there was around 50 screens, and most of them were like big theaters with really good sound systems. And but now right now on 42nd there's two huge theaters, and they have a bunch of large screens, but it's not the same. It's not the same.
I mean, it's amazing that a 1,500 seat theater would be full for a movie. I feel like it used to be such a big deal when these movies came out, and it was this kind of, like you said, a live experience with that energy. And now it's kind of, it's a little.
Yeah, and then Ziegfeld also would sometimes bring in films like Lawrence of Arabia and Spartacus and stuff like that, and that would be another experience to actually watch those classic films for the first time in a theater like that. I remember when Radio City Musical did their whole series, and they brought back Jaws and Dirty Harry and Psycho, and it was such an incredible experience seeing those movies in that theater, and seeing the Wild Bunch when they got reopened in the theaters. Those were also really great. So once in a while, because whenever you're seeing repertory titles, you're going to small houses like the Film Forum and stuff like that, and Walter Reed. When you get an opportunity to see it in those big screens, it's like there's nothing like it, because now you're watching it the way people saw when it opened. So, but yeah, New York was it's still a good movie theaters city, but used to be a great one. So,
Nostalgia. Well, I love learning about you and movies, your movie going experience. But let's get into some. Actually, before we get into the audience questions, I know that you had some announcements that you'd like to make. Do you want to make the first one before we get into the audience questions?
Yeah, I'll make three announcements. One now, one probably like in the middle somewhere, and then before we go, I'll make the biggest announcement. I know one of the films that people have asked for a lot is this movie that Kirk Douglas directed in the 70s and starred in, called Posse. One of the few films here. I'm not sure if it's the only film he directed, but it's one of the few films. Maybe it's not the only one. But, it's with him and Bruce Dern and Bo Hopkins. It's like a really good Western. I remember seeing it on HBO. So it's going to finally come out on Blu-ray from 4K scan of the original camera negative. And it's going to look amazing, and it's going to be great. So that's the first announcement.
Cool. Thank you for that. So everyone, make sure you stick around till the end of the show for Frank's even bigger announcement. But why don't we get into audience questions now? We have a lot, so try to get through as many as we can. First one is from Jim Chiappa. He asks, if you had the chance to restore and physically release any movie from movie history, which one would you choose?
That's a tough one. There's a lot of films, but the film that I would probably choose is called The Victors. It's a film that Columbia Pictures, I think Sony owns. It's a film that was that has an incredible cast, like a big ensemble international cast. The 3 hour World War II film. Used to be seen on cable a lot on HBO and places like that, but it's never been released on. I don't think it's ever been released on VHS. It was never released on DVD or Blu-ray. If there's a film, if there's a film, it's like a hauntingly beautiful anti-war World War II film. George Peppard, George Hamilton, Jean Moreau, Eli Wallach,
Oh, wow.
Peter Fonda. I think it has like a huge cast, and so
Is
yeah,
that
if I had to choose one, that would be the one probably.
is that one that you've tried to get the licensing for, or it's
Yeah,
just
when I discussed the deal with Sony, I did talk to them about it and some of the films that they had never released on home video. Some of them are not available due to legal issues. But this one, I think it's elements issues. I think it's like it would be a very problematic and expensive restoration if you wanted to release the uncut, original version. So.
gotcha. Nick P asks, what are some of the factors that determine whether or not a release gets a slipcover?
Well, these days now, most of our titles get slipcovers. Almost, there was a period where we were doing for few, and then now we pretty much do it for almost the ones we usually skip are the older films, like the films from the 30s and 40s. Not all of them. Some 30s and 40s films do get slipcovers, like Revenge of the Zombies will have a slipcover. But a lot of the two westerns that we're releasing this month, Cattle Drive, not this month in November, Cattle Drive and California, they're not going to have slipcases. The fans that buy the classics, they're not as obsessed about. Mostly the genre fans and the people that are into the 70s and 60s and 80s movies. They slipcases mean more to them than fans that buy films from the 30s and 40s. So.
That makes sense. Brian asks, what is the minimum number of units where you'd consider a title a success?
They always want to know inside. Well, it depends. It depends how much we paid for it, right? So if you're a film that you've had a very small advance, 1,500 units on a Blu-ray would be okay. You're not gonna get rich. You're not gonna go broke. You're probably gonna be a little bit over even, and it'll be in the black. You're not gonna be in the red. But when it comes to 4K titles, at minimum, you want to sell at least 5,000 units. Most of the early ones that we released are over 10,000, and some have done better than that. So when we take a chance on a smaller one, we still hope that it's going to do at least that many units. But Blu-ray is usually on a title on a good title, like, so let's say the Fletch films or something like that, you expect to sell at least 3,000 to 5,000 units. So.
I mean, I imagine it's such a sliding numbers, all kinds of factors, the commercial success of the film originally versus something that is more obscure. I'm sure there's all these different factors that play into it.
Yeah, and that really, like success, being a top 10 hit in the 1970s does not mean anything to today's audience. A movie we released called Other Side of the Mountain was, I think, the number 6 or number 7 biggest hit of the year was released. But, the Blu-ray barely hit 1,000 units. So I don't think the fans that saw that in the theaters in the 70s actually remember that it was a huge hit. So they're still around. So.
Right. Question from James Host. As we all know, physical media is becoming a rarity in brick and mortar retail stores. This is leaving only the boutique online stores like Kino Lorber as one of the only remaining non-Amazon options. Do you foresee a time where Blu-ray/UHD releases come back to retail sales chains, especially as more and more people become disenfranchised by the rising costs/plurality of streaming services, as well as the insecurity of title availability on streaming?
I don't think so. Best Buy was, they were one of the last ones that we were still doing business with. The big box stores only deal with very low price product and all on consignment. So it's a very risky proposition when you send somebody 10,000. So let's say you do a deal with some of the big box stores, send them 10,000 copies. It's on consignment, so they don't really care how many units they sell and before they return it. So if you get a large return on something like that, it could really cause problems for the company. So as far as new stores opening up, I mean, the only other store that kind of carries titles like ours or Criterion's or other kind of type of companies is the Barnes and Noble stores. But even them, I hope they're around. They're going to be around for a lot longer. But at this point, they're probably the last one standing because so I don't think anybody's going to get into the home video business again, unless they're like a specialty store like Scarecrow Video or what we used to have when I used to work for Kim's Video. Something like that may still work. It would have to be in the right neighborhood. It would have to be. They would have to offer, things that are not available to everyone online. So
maybe the more niche brick and mortar stores, but you don't really foresee larger chains provide
because
yeah,
I don't think we're going back to that. People always try to say, well, Blu-rays and 4K, they try to compare it to LPs, to records. It's not a correct comparison because records, they got rediscovered because a lot of the big artists released their collections on records, and I think a lot of the younger generation kind of embraced the whole LP and buying turntables and playing, and also the hipsters and people like that. They also, so it became kind of a thing. There is, I think a smaller percentage of the younger generation, I think, are buying this because I'm very happy they are, but I think the majority are probably just going to be streaming. I don't think they're going to be buying discs.
You never know. It may catch on like LPs, like vinyl. It could happen with the younger generations. Hopefully. So
Yeah.
We'll see, right? Well, in the meantime, good thing for Kino Lorber, for online boutiques. There's always going to be a place for people to find physical media. So
yeah, well, there's other stores too, like Deep Discount DVD, and I know they all big. I mean, Walmart has an online store, and Target has an online store. So it's not just like Amazon and the actual boutiques of each label. Yeah, we have direct to consumer sale. We do very well. We have a big sale going on right now. Criterion, Shout, everybody sells directly to consumers, but if you're looking to buy titles from other stores, there are stores that carry titles from all the labels, like Deep Discount DVD carries everything, so but Amazon is they're the king, they're the ones that carry the most and offer the best prices, I think. So
that is true. Ryan Miller has 3 good questions. Number 1, why do you, Kino Lorber, occasionally break your trend of matching spines to include the original title logos of some films?
Trying to understand the question. What did this say again? I'm sorry.
Why does Kino Lorber occasionally break the trend of matching spines to include the original title logos of some of the films?
Oh,
yeah.
Well, it's the Studio Classic brand, as you can see behind me, this part right here. I don't know if you can see it on it was from the beginning we set it up where it was going to have a very simple spine and simple disc and discard. When we started doing O cards like these, we started including the original titles again. That's the one thing we changed when we did Kino Called. Kino Called from the beginning, both the wrap and the O card, the slipcase, included the original title treatment. And then other brands that we have, like Kino Classics and Kino Lorbeer, those always have had the original title treatment. It was just a KO Studio Classics thing, which the regular wraps never have the original title treatment. Just the slipcase that includes it. So,
Got it. His second question is, the subject of disc rot has come up on social media a lot recently, relating to the longevity of physical media. Do you have any hard and fast information about the length of time modern discs are expected to last and how a collector might increase their lifespan?
no, I pretty much every disc I've ever purchased, when I'm popping it in, it still plays. So I really don't know that much about that. I mean, yeah, I think depending how they're stored, where they're stored.
Yeah.
If you're keeping them in a really warm basement, there's a good chance there's going to be some problems. If you're keeping them next to your heater, I would not.
No, don't do that.
Not put it on the porch. If you're keeping your regular apartment on a shelf like this, I think they'll be fine. I think they're going to last as long as. And I think Blu-rays are safer than DVDs were. I think Blu-rays last longer. VHS tapes, yeah, they got messed up pretty quickly, especially if you didn't play them often. It's kind of funny, but the longer, like the same goes with equipment. Like if you have a DVD player and never use it, after 2 years, if you pop in, it's gonna have issues. It needs the machine needs to run always. So a lot of times that's the thing with players with electronics. It needs to be used. If it's not used, the same with turntables, with cassette decks, with CD players, if they're not used, they're gonna start experiencing issues. So
Got to give it some love.
yeah, you got to watch the movies.
Yeah. And finally, his third question is, could you explain a little bit about the process behind choosing which films to release and how you go about obtaining the rights? Do you have access to lists of what films various studios have available and choose from there based on what you think might sell?
Well, I wish everybody had a list. They don't. Only one studio pretty much has a list, and even with them, we have to find titles that are not on the list and say, "Hey, I think you guys have this," and then they go back and come back and say, "Oh yeah, we do have this." So uh, the list, yeah, it's how do we choose? How do I choose? Well, I usually look at what I think deserves a release and what I think would eventually also make us a little bit of money because it is a business.
Mhm.
We have taken a lot of chances and released smaller films, ones that we haven't paid too much for. And if it's part of a package that's crossed with all the other titles and there's bigger titles there, protecting the smaller title, you end up taking more risk and picking up the smaller Republic Picture films that we did with Paramount or the smaller the B and C type of movies. There are so many movies that are not available to us. I mean, I would love to release. There's probably like right now. There's probably like a few hundred to 1,000 titles that I would love to release that are not available to us because that we don't have a current deal with the company or because the studio is not willing to license those films because it's a signature title. It's a title that's a franchise title. There's different reasons. So as far as how I decide, I have a very good sense of what works in this business. I've been on both sides of it
Yeah, you've been doing it for a long time.
I was a buyer for a long time. I was, so I do have a good understanding of what works. And um, am I always right? No. Am I always have I made mistakes? Yes, but I would say I have a pretty good batting record. So.
And do you take into consideration people's suggestions and requests as well, like from fans?
Uh, the no-brainers that the fans suggest, you know, like I have fans that I've read on Facebook or Twitter, why don't you guys release The Hunter? Why don't you release, The Getaway? Okay, if The Getaway was available to me, I think I would have released it. So those type of suggestions. But then there's the suggestion the fans make that it's a film that they really love. It's like a film that they really care about. It's like a very small, minor film. Oh, I don't know how well this will sell, but it's a movie I really love. Yeah, those are going to be much harder to acquire, even if they're available to us. When it comes to the smaller films, it's always good if it already has an HD master, because that means we pick it up. We'll just have to pay an advance and then um, not worry about doing a new transfer. Now, if you pick the film like that up and the transfer is really bad, then you have a decision to do a new transfer or drop it and replace it with something else. So I don't mean no disrespect to anyone, but it's not a situation where I would take suggestions, because whatever's being suggested to me, I think I've already thought of. Either they're not available to me, or it's something that we looked at and said, you know what, I don't think so. Now, I'll give you an example of something. We've done 14 deals with MGM. That's like the most deals we've ever done on a label. And there are films that we picked up in the 13th deal, because the 14th deal was actually just renewals. But the 13th deal, we ended up picking up titles for the first time that had been available since 2014. The Claim, Fluke, Garbo Talks. That means I had passed on that film 13 times before I said, all right, let me give it a chance. So there's always, and then there are fans that accuse us of scraping the bottom of the barrel. They're like, oh, you guys are now picking up stuff. That is not scraping. Sidney Lumet directed Garbo Talks, stars Simon Bancroft. Fluke has a very good cast. Eric Stoltz and Matthew Modine and Samuel L. Jackson playing a Rottweiler. So so those movies have always been interesting to me. I was a fan of Fluke. I love the guys, the directors. I think the Italian director Carlo, forgetting his last name, he directed a beautiful Italian action film, and then the second film was Fluke. So I was always a fan of the film. I just never wanted to take a chance on it, and finally I did. So
Got it. So long way or short way of putting that, there's a lot of factors that go into it. It's not like you just ignore fan suggestions. There's a lot going on. That it's a much more complicated.
But I'll be honest. There's been times where somebody's listed a bunch of titles on Blu-ray.com and stuff like that, and then I'm like, yeah, why have I passed on that? And there's been a couple of titles here and there that I have looked at, and it's brought it back to my attention. And I've looked at it and said, yeah, you know what? Let me look into this. Sometimes with TV movies, there are TV movies that just because it played on NBC doesn't mean Universal owned it, because it could have been a CBS production that they licensed to NBC. So there's always that finding out who actually owns what. So the TV movies but the problem with TV movies is that there's so many good ones that haven't been released that I would love to release. I was very close to a deal that I was going to release about 20 really good ones, but that deal fell through. There's a lot of those films don't have the needed paperwork as far as clearing the music and everything else. So I'm pretty sure everything is cleared, but the studios don't want to license titles that they don't have documentation that says they actually have cleared the music and whatever else.
Got it. Thank you for answering those. Andrew W. says, I have a very wonky question about film restoration. Is there a layman's answer for why it is so difficult to restore an older movie's title/credit sequences? With few exceptions, even if the picture quality of the main film print is as pristine as it was in 1962, the opening credits will be noticeably grainier. Is there an explanation for this?
Well, the beginning of the film gets played the most. Anytime they're testing something or whatever. So I don't know if you ever see a movie in a repertory theater, the first reel is always the one that looks the worst. So that's one reason. Another thing is that most of the time, I think when it comes to restorations, and I wouldn't call it restoration, remastering, because restoration is actually sitting there frame by frame and cleaning everything. But remastering, usually you're really worried about the actual film when the film plays. The credits are actually pretty easy to clean sometimes because you could all you have to do is actually you could DVR the credits, but using digital cleanup. But I think also films from the 30s and earlier and 20s and early 30s or even to late 30s, those films have sat around for a long, long time, so they're going to have issues. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think it's mainly because the first reel, the opening has been played the most. That's why it's the most damaged. So it probably takes the most amount of work to clean up. So
That makes all the sense in the world. Corey Needler says, I love the consistency in the spine labels of the Kino Lorber Blu-ray non-slipcover releases. Do you have plans to one day change the font style of the spines or change the overall design of the Blu-ray covers?
I think there would be like a lynch mob outside if I did that. It just doesn't make sense after 3,000-4,000 movies we change it. No, we'll never change it. It will always look the way it does up there. It kind of looks cool together. That's when you put them next to each other. But I also love the look of the O cards, because it's so colorful.
Yeah, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yeah. Well, some people do think it's broke. There are a few that
Well,
don't like those spines, but it's too
not
late.
everyone's gonna love it, but I think the branding works. People know it, it's familiar, and that's all that matters. Rob Holloway has a great question that I myself have wondered before. He says, I'd love to see some sort of Kino Lorber Physical Media Collectors Club. I'd pay an annual membership to get some benefits. Have you ever thought about something like that?
We've thought
You
about
completely
it.
rock, by the way, he says.
Thank you, thank you. We've no, we've thought about that. We've thought. It's just we release so many titles. How are we gonna? It would have to be selected titles, and the fans would have to say which title from these 5 or 6 4Ks, which one is the one they're gonna get that month. It's gonna be it's a lot easier if you're releasing 5 or 6 movies a month. Then you could just create a club and they get all those films and they pay the fee and so we've thought about it. We've thought about a bunch of different programs. It's not something that we're not gonna do or we're not gonna ever do. We've looked into it. It just has to make sense for
What about paying a monthly subscription cost and then just picking 5 or 6 out of everything that's released, or even like a blind grab bag? That could be kind of fun. I don't know if
I don't know.
fans would feel that way, but if they
You,
can choose at least.
you're gonna get a lot of angry people. I didn't want this movie. Why did you send me this? Why did you send me that? You could have. I wanted this one, and yeah, I don't think the grab bag. I think the surprise bag is something unless you really know their taste. It's different when you're working in a store. I worked in a video store and in a record store. I had customers that would come in, and I would have bags prepared for them, and $200-300 worth of merchandise, and they would just buy it on my recommendation. And it's because I knew their taste. It was the same with when I worked at Kim's Video, I did that, and when I worked at JNR Music World, I used to do that. Once I knew what the type of music somebody liked or type of stuff, I knew what to get for them. When you're dealing with all the thousands of customers that we deal with on the direct to consumer side, yeah, we really don't know. As far as I mean, I guess we could set up something, but we've thought about it. It's very complicated. It's just like
Maybe they can fill out a questionnaire or something, like a detailed questionnaire about their tastes, what they look forward
yeah,
to,
but who's gonna sit there
something like that.
who's gonna
Well,
fill up your
people who
bag?
really want this membership, I don't know. You never know. There
No,
could
but I'm saying who from our side is gonna fill up that bag? You're gonna ask
Oh.
Devin to do it. So,
Well, that's a different story.
it's just
All right, well,
that's like a full-time job. Somebody has to do. So.
okay, something to think about for the future down the road.
We've thought
Uh,
about it. I mean, listen, we've thought about merchandising. I got the Kale Studio Classics
oh,
hat,
nice.
and
Oh,
I
yeah. Do
have,
you want to make your second announcement
and
too?
then I have the Kino Cult hat. We're gonna start offering these, I think, in the December sale.
Nice.
The hat. Yeah, I could go ahead and make the second announcement. The second announcement is this never before released title that I acquired at olive, and then I had to drop it because the interpositive was in very bad shape. But now with the fact that we're going back to the camera negative and everything, I decided to pick it up again. It's a 1965 film that Arthur Hiller directed called Promise Her Anything, with Warren Beatty and Leslie Caron and Robert Cummings. And it's co-written by William Peter Blatty, who later on wrote The Exorcist. So,
Oh,
so a romantic comedy from the writer of Exorcist. So,
that is the best tagline I've ever heard. Just go with that, it'll sell.
yeah.
Cool. Thank you for that announcement. We have a few questions from someone going by Place Logo here. They are asking, what special feature do you most regret not being able to include on a release, and why was it not possible to use it?
So he's something that was available that was already, well, there's always some really good extras, like the Criterion audio commentary for Silence of the Lambs with the cast and crew. That's something we would have loved to include, but they would have never licensed them to us. But as far as reaching out to people and them saying no to you, we've reached out to a lot of famous people, and some have surprisingly said yes. I was very close to getting an interview with Clint Eastwood. That one I remember for us not to be able to get that. That was a very big letdown. Not getting Jean-Claude Van Damme for Hard Target when we got everybody else in the movie. All the other stars did it, but he decided not to. And then he also um, didn't do Sudden Death. So whenever people think that, oh, you should get this guy to do audio commentary or this person to do an interview, it's not as easy as that, because a lot of people don't want to do it. A lot of people, like Robert Redford, I was hoping he would talk about 3 Days of the Condor, because he always talked about how much that was one of his favorite films and stuff like that. And but no, like some actors don't like going back and talking about it. We've tried to get Faye Dunaway in the past and Shirley MacLaine for all the movies I've released with her, with Ormond Deuce and Sweet Charity and everything else, and Two Meals with Sister Sarah. And so yeah, so that was the big regret. But as far as previously produced extras that were not available to us, yeah, there were a bunch, but the one I remember the most was the Silence of the Lambs one.
Got it. So it's not for lack of trying.
No,
Uh,
no, we always try. So,
and they also ask, which previous release do you most regret you no longer have the rights for?
well, there's so much. Then there's titles that go out of print because I placed them out of print because they've stopped selling, and some of those sometimes are like personal favorites. Um, but then there's ones that you lose the rights to because the studio you did the deal with decided uh, to either stop licensing titles or they took the film elsewhere. Um, so I would say that, when we released Kolchak, The Night Stalker, it would have been really nice to also have the rights to the two movies, The Night Stalker and Night Strangler. But there were a few really key titles in that Disney deal that we would have loved to have renewed. And then there's also some really good titles in the Fox deal, the Oxbow Incident and 1 Million Year BC, The Laughing Policeman, titles like that. I would have loved to continue selling those. So those will be the ones that really kind of stand out as the ones that we had to let go.
The ones that got away.
Yeah.
Which title released by a different studio do you most admire?
I hate them all. So, there are different studios. I didn't even know there were other labels. I thought it was just us. So
Okay, we can skip that
I
question.
don't. No, when somebody does when they release a film that um, I like Arrow as a label. I think Arrow does a very good job. Not sure how they do some stuff with these huge books and everything that they include. But there's always been like some releases that they've done. I think I like their release of you know, I think I've liked some of their releases, but anytime any label does a special edition of a film I love, I mean, there's a part of me that's a little jealous that I was like, yeah, I wish I would have had that, but that's what happens, and I just saw No Country for Old Men get announced by Criterion, and that's a film that I asked Paramount for a while ago, and they told me it wasn't available. So now I know why it wasn't available. So, but there's a lot of titles, this Shout released like Escape from New York. That's a movie that I love, and Arrow, I think did The Wanderers, and there's not The Wanderers, The Warriors. I'm sorry, The Warriors.
Yeah.
But even a cool, fun little movie like Tremors, that's like a movie that I really loved. I would have loved to release that, but yeah, you win some, you lose some. I mean, I'm pretty sure that they sit around and also say, "Oh, I wish we had this. I wish we had that." But yeah, no, yeah, those are the ones. But I mean, as far as labels are concerned, I mean, I'm probably more of a fan of like Arrow and Shout than I am of Criterion. Criterion has a lot of great films, but they also have a lot of stuff that I would never watch. So.
Got it. Which filmmaker do you most want to release a film by, but who you have not released any titles from before?
A filmmaker?
Yeah, filmmaker, director.
Am I missing somebody that I really like? Well, from the younger filmmakers, yeah. So let's go. I mean, I have released the Coen Brothers. I mean, Coen Brothers was. I mean, I would say Quentin Tarantino. I would have loved to release the Tarantino film. He's a little older than me, and he worked in a video store. I work in a video store.
He's
He
a
became
fan, right? If he's a
he
fan of
became
Kino Lorber.
he's a fan. He became a big time filmmaker. I thought I was going to become a big time filmmaker, but I never went for it. Uh, so yeah, I would have loved to release one of his films. You know,
Do you think it might still happen one day?
there was an outside chance of something happening, but it didn't look good. No, his films are they're very their titles that perform really well. The only way it would happen is if he asks them to give the film to us. Like once in a while, some fans. Terrence Malick asked Warner Brothers to license Badlands to Criterion because he's a big Criterion fan. So it has to be something like that. I mean, as far as me, getting, I don't think the studios are gonna really. I don't think they will license his films because his films are all big sellers. So.
Well, Quentin, if you're listening, maybe you have the power to change that. Okay, their last question is, ever considered a music video collection?
Music video collections, well, it's complicated because let's say I know that it's been done before, and I know some people have. I would love to do them, but if it has to be, it's a very complicated thing because some of the songs are not all the songs are with the same labels, and then there's also the additional royalties that are paid to the musicians for the actual inclusion of the songs and all that. So it has to be like a package deal done with the band, with the songwriters. And usually those things happen by the label themselves, it's once in a while you see like, I know that Criterion did a Beastie Boys collection, and there was a few other ones here and there, but majority of the time when those type of music video sets come out, they get released by Sony releases a bunch of ones, and MCA Records through Universal puts out some other stuff. So they would have to have a partner. Warner Records uses Warner Home Video to release something. So.
Got it. Oh, it looks like we have some real-time questions coming through the chat. Damian P asks, Kino Lorber, what are a couple titles that surprised Frank sales-wise, both positive and negative?
I don't want to keep on saying the same movies because I've said this a few times. I know that I have said in the past Space Camp was a big, but career opportunities was, I thought it was going to do well. I never thought it was going to do as well as it did. Pretty much it did so well that I decided to put it out on 4K. So that just tells you how much of a surprise it was. I mean, I mentioned Cry Freedom as a big disappointment in the past, but there's other films. Havana, Legal Eagles. I didn't think those were going to be big sellers, but I didn't think they were going to do as poorly as they did.
What about some positive surprises?
Well, career opportunities was one. Other ones that I pretty much said they were going to do well. Nobody, like the Hot Spot did very well for us, but that I kind of knew it was going to do well. But surprising, re-releases of some reissues that I've done, or actually re-releases titles that had been released previously by other labels, and then I put them out as in a better edition, and they were very good sellers, like Stone Cold. The previous release had no extras, not even a trailer. This version had interviews with everybody, the whole cast and crew. That was another one that was a disappointment. I thought we were going to get William Forsythe, and until the last day, couple of days, he had agreed to do it, but then something happened and he had to back out. So there's always you sometimes end up waiting for the talent, but then it comes to a point where you're like, okay, I only have this film for so long, so I have to go ahead and release it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so those are the ones. I mean, there are a lot. I mean, but most of the time when I'm acquiring a film, I have a very good idea of how it's going to do. So if I had a lot of surprises, I don't think I would have this job.
That's a good point. Clinton Osaski is asking, any chance you will reprint slipcovers that go out of print?
No, I don't think so. We had one time offered, we had 100 or so overprinting of The Good, Bad, and the Ugly 4K slipcase that we offered to the fans. No, that's something I don't think we're gonna do. We also don't want to get into the slipcase business of selling slipcases. We did it as a one-time thing because we didn't print enough O cards for The Good, Bad, and the Ugly. That was my mistake. But I know that we just announced the Bob Hope Bing Crosby Road to collection, and a lot of fans were like, "Oh, can I just buy the slipcase?" And I'm like, "I'm sorry, but no, we're not going to be selling slipcases." What I suggest they do is they take the 7 movies, they put it on eBay and sell them and buy the box set, because the box set, you're retail wise, you're saving $75 by buying the box set. So technically, whatever you sell that 7 films to somebody that just wants the movies, you're probably gonna end up spending for the set when it's on sale, So
Pro tip right there. Okay, back to the pre-submitted questions. Wes asks, are you working on releasing more TV series, especially vintage ones from the 80s and prior?
we announced Dark Room, the 1981 anthology TV show, 16 episodes, hosted by James Coburn. So that's coming out next year. I'm always looking into picking up more TV shows. We had acquired a TV show that was 12, 13 seasons, but we ended up letting it go. We're just not built for releasing long-running TV series. The ones that I would look into doing would be the ones that were, 2 to 3 seasons long. The only one that I would do that is longer than that, if it was available to me, would be the Alfred Hitchcock TV shows. That one is, I think, 7 seasons. The other one is, I think, 5 seasons. But that also has a lot of problems because a lot of the episodes are not cleared for release. So even if they licensed them to us and allowed us to put it out on Blu-ray, we couldn't include every episode. So that just I would not want to release something like that. So but yeah, so no, there's no other TV shows at this point we're working on. But like I said, the right one that shows up, comes up, we'll go after it. So.
Got it. Miles Long has an interesting question about just watching movies in general. When I go to watch a movie, it's a struggle to not reach for the phone. What do you think? What do you do to keep focus on the movie and not act like a doom scroll junkie?
Well, I'm different, probably different generation of probably. Uh, it took me forever to actually get a cell phone, and then for the longest time, I was still walking around with my flip phone. So, uh, I uh, I would just put everything away, turn off the phone, and just concentrate and watch the film. Uh, I love watching movies with people, but I also hate it when I'm watching a movie with people and they're regularly asking questions or talking through the movie, especially if more than one.
Yeah,
And
same.
so, yeah, so I think, yeah, I mean, just I don't have that problem. So I would say but I do just, put the phone in somewhere else far away from you so you don't have access to it. Uh, and my biggest problem is more like not going to the kitchen and getting more snacks. That's my biggest problem.
I think that's perfectly fine. No, but I actually have that problem sometimes where I do tend to look at my phone. I can be a doom scroller, and I think in my opinion, I tend to love the movie so much more. I get so much more out of the experience when I make a conscious effort to not look at my phone and I just focus on the movie. So you can have a kind of a half-baked experience if you want, if you look at your phone, or you can have a fully immersed experience and really enjoy the movie a lot more. So
Yeah.
just think of that next time.
Well, also,
Put it away.
go to the movie theaters and go to a theater. That way,
That too.
you're told to turn off your phone, so your phone
Yeah,
is
you
off.
have no choice.
You have no choice. Uh, so that way you don't have the option of reaching for the phone. But if you're watching it at home, just uh, disciplined. Just
Good old-fashioned discipline.
uh,
Let's do maybe one or two more, and then we have some title-specific questions. But David Hollingsworth asks, what's the best title to start off with when collecting from Kino Lorber?
whoa. Well, yes, in my opinion, it would be The Good, Bad, and the Ugly. That's like one of my all-time favorite movies. That's like one of the greatest films of all time, one of the greatest westerns of all time. Quentin Tarantino calls it the perfect movie. Um, I would start with that. But as far as Kino history is concerned, Metropolis, Nosferatu. I just there's so many films, so many. If I know the person's taste, I could tell them. I mean, Touch of Evil would be an incredible one to pick up, and um, there's so many ones that we've released, Um, but yeah, I mean, I would say The Good, Bad, and the Ugly would be the one I would start with.
That's a great one.
And technically, you should really start with the Fistful of Dollars and then watch for a few dollars more and then Good, Bad, and the Ugly. But those three films, buy them as a collections.
Let's do one more before we get to the title updates. What happens during the process? This is from Jerison Oracion. And he is asking, what happens during the process of remastering a film with the supervision of the director of it?
Well, most of the time when we do a new transfer, we have the previous master available to us, and we use that as source for color and for everything else to make sure that we get as close to that as possible. Then the filmmaker or the cinematographer comes in and looks at it, and they have a lot of, they have the option to change the color grading and everything else. And in most cases, they know what they're talking about and they do a great job. And then sometimes you have a situation where a filmmaker was never happy with the original film and wants to completely change the colors of the film, and that creates a problem because that the fans of the film will forever. I mean, infamously, John Badham when he had the option to remaster Dracula, he got rid of the color. He said, I always wanted to release this as a black and white film. Yeah, but well, it was a 1979 movie and everybody had seen it in color. So when Shout re-released it, they did the right thing. They went back and included both. Uh, but um, but yeah, in most cases, they usually show up after they spend a day or two in the studio looking at it, and you hope it's a day or half a day. But sometimes, depending on who they are, and there's some filmmakers are legendary for spending weeks and going back on certain frames and all that kind of stuff. So that's when you know, like, all right, I have to stay away from this person's films because we do not want to lose our shirts.
They're a little too hands-on.
Yeah.
Got it. Well, awesome. Thank you to everyone who submitted the questions. So those were some of our broader questions, but there were a lot of questions about specific titles. I'm talking like hundreds. So we had to go through and sort of pick out the ones where certain titles were asked about repeatedly. So just wanted to see if you can give any updates on these titles. We'll start with Bottoms. Any updates on the Bottoms Blu-ray?
Yeah, we're working on that. It's going to be next year. It's going to come out probably early next year sometimes. We are right now creating a behind the scenes and deleted scenes type of a featurette. I think we've recorded 2 commentaries, if I'm not mistaken.
From the whole cast and crew?
Yeah, it's going to be a really nice special edition. So yeah, so that should be out hopefully. I would say February or March, something like that, next year.
Cool. When can we expect the next Audie Murphy box sets?
The Audie Murphy boxes I could have released in December. It just takes a little longer because you have to have 3 films. You want to get audio commentaries for them. So Volume 4 and Volume 5 should be out sometime next year. I would say 4 in March or April, and then 5 probably in May or June. So
When can we expect the Western Shane starring Alan Ladd?
that one is another one that we have talent involved. George Stevens Jr. Had some issues with the previous transfer and some day for night shots and stuff like that. And so that's being done at Paramount, and it's going to be supervised by him and the good people at Paramount, and also maybe I've heard rumors Christopher Nolan. So that's probably going to be out. I'm hoping it's going to be out next spring, maybe at latest summer. So
What's the status of the Ilsa films?
the Elsa films, we're remastering them right now. They're all being done in Canada. That's where Film Elements were. They're all and I don't want to get into the whole history of what happened to the Film Elements, but they were in Canada. Well, they were Canadian productions, but they should have been in with Lionsgate in Los Angeles, but somehow they ended up there. But yeah, so they should be out hopefully next spring to next summer also. It's going to take time. It's because we've got most of the extras done. We're going to release them as standalone releases and also the same time as a set. So it's going to include, similar to what we did with the Missing in Action thing, where each film is going to have its own slipcase and its own cover, but there's also going to be a box set that's going to include all 4. The actual cases are going to be numbered. They're Kino Cult numbers. The box set is not going to. So
We had a lot of people asking about that, by the way. When do you expect to release De Palma's Snake Eyes on 4K? Will it be before the end of 2024?
that one I'm looking at probably releasing in December. We're just recording the commentary right now, and we have found some archival interviews. I'm hoping the one deleted scene is there, but I don't know if it's going to be there. I know there's an alternate ending that they talked about in the De Palma documentary. only way I could find it is that horrible version that you're seeing on YouTube and everything. I don't want to put that on the disc. So if you really care that much about it, just go to YouTube and watch it. So, but unfortunately, when it comes to these movies, a lot of times the talent, you reach out to them for interviews, they're not interested in doing one. So so that's gonna be I'm thinking it's gonna be in December. So
Okay. Any updates on the Lost in Translation 4K release? Any Sophia
we finally got some movement. We're very close, fingers crossed. We got in touch with some of people, Sofia Coppola's people. So we're setting a little short meeting, and then going right after that. Where it looks like, we're gonna create the master, and then she and her cinematographer, I think, are gonna come and oversee the whole thing and make sure that the colors and everything is up to their.
Is she going to be providing commentary for that?
I don't know if she did record. If she recorded one for the previous mass release. If she did, we're probably gonna port that over. We will, of course, ask her to do a new one if she's interested, or at least an interview. But we'll see.
And lastly, when is the 4K of Miracle Mile coming out?
There is no 4K of Miracle Mile. Miracle Mile is a brand new 4K scan of the original camera negative, and the same thing with Cherry 2000, the two Steve DeJarnette movies. Where I'm hoping to put those out in December also, latest January. They're both gonna come out on these beautiful new Blu-rays with new extras. Both were loaded with extras before. They're gonna even have more extras now. Miracle Mile probably will be 2 discs because the extras are so much, it's gonna take so much space, that I think doesn't make sense for us to put the film, all those extras on one BD50. Another one that I want to mention that nobody didn't mention, Lock, Stock, Two Smoking Barrels, the Guy Ritchie film. We're still working on it. There's an outside chance that we may end up dropping that, but at this point, we're still working on it. I'm hoping that we get to keep it. We're not getting the response, that we need from people. We reach out to a lot of his representatives and everything, and nobody's responded to us yet. So we're still working on that.
Fingers crossed. Well, thank you for those updates. Do you want to make your final big announcement before we wrap?
Yeah, well, the big announcement is going to be that, on 4K, sometime next year, we're going to release the airport franchise, 4 airport movies. 1971 with Dean Martin and Burt Lancaster, the 75 one with Jack Lemmon, and the 77 one with Charlton Heston, and the 79 one which was called Concorde 19 Airport 79 with Alain Delon. All 4 films feature the great George Kennedy, different roles. So those are going to come out on 4K and new transfers on Blu-ray sometime, I would say. Right now we're mastering them, so my guess is that it'll probably be out in the spring or summer, late spring, early summer. And there's also that's also going to be released as a collection, and at the same time separate releases with each one with separate slipcases. Before the fans ask, we've asked them for the additional the TV version of Airport, and they cannot clear those for release. So unfortunately, it's not going to include that. But the films are going to look amazing. They've never looked as good as this. They're going to be brand new 4K restorations. They're going to have some new extras, and looking forward to that release. It's a big one. So
awesome, very exciting. Well, thank you all for joining us today, and thank you to those who submitted your awesome questions. They were really great. And Frank, thank you as always for your insight. And of course, you can all find some of the titles we discussed today, along with thousands of others at kinolorber.com or klstudioclassics.com. The links for both are in the description below. And while you're there, sign up for our newsletter so that you can submit a question in the future. And be sure to follow us on social. So thank you so much, everyone. Be sure to check back next month for episode 5. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.